Dobrý večer, já jsem Ivana Baba Jagua, jsem henna a jagua umělkyně a lektorka, zakladatelka Baba Jagua Akademie a jsem nesmírně ráda, že můžu přivítat Alku Joshi, autorku knihy Henna Artist, kterou pod názvem Tajemství na kůži v češtině vydalo nakladatelství Domino Albatros Media. Welcome, Alka, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. That was beautiful. I loved hearing the chat.
Alka, do you wear henna?
I don't usually wear henna. I have to go to so many different kinds of functions, and I want to make sure that my hands aren't in that stage where they are, where it's fading. So I would need to constantly be reapplying it in the same places. And that's so hard to do.
Yes. Well, I was writing an article about your book and I wrote Alka Joshi, American writer with Indian origins. Do you feel like American or Indian or both?
I feel like a combination of both. You know, when you grow up in a very different culture from the East and you go to the West, there's no way that you can separate the Eastern part of you from that culture. So I spoke my first words in Hindi. I ate my first food that was Indian. For babies, you always feed them rice. That's the first thing you feed them for solid food. My favorite memories are of color and flowers and saris. And I wanted to dress just like my mother always. So for me, that part of my being is in my DNA. It will never leave me. So then I think coming to America, it was like adding another layer of culture onto what I already had. That's why I think I always feel like I am part of two cultures. But Ivana, I feel as if I'm not really a part of either one completely, if that makes sense. So I never feel 100% Indian. I never feel 100% American. I think that is a great thing, because when I write or when I talk to people from different countries or when I read something, I'm able to understand multiple perspectives. I understand why one country thinks of another country a certain way, and I also understand the vice versa of it. So I think it's actually the best place to be.
And it's an advantage. Your book is based on the story of your mother, right?
Yes.
How do you remember your mother, or what is real in the story and what is made up? Can you tell us more?
Yes, I can. And I'm going to show you a picture of my mother. So this is my mother at 18. This is when she was first married. So this is when you picture Lakshmi, please picture this woman here. Lakshmi looks just like my mother. The main character appears like my mother. My mother had green eyes. I have blue-gray eyes. My younger brother has green eyes, and those are unusual. Only 1% of Indians have those colored eyes. So this is why I made Lakshmi and her sister Radha, and then the baby, Nikki, I made them all have those same color eyes so they could recognize each other. They are unusual and they stand out. My mother also had the same graceful demeanor that Lakshmi, our protagonist, does. But that's where the similarity ends. After that, it was really the life I wanted to imagine for my mother. I wanted to imagine that she could leave her marriage, keep herself child-free, go on and do things that she might have wanted to do in her life. I do think she was artistic, but she never had a chance to explore that side of her. She was very crafty. She knit, she sewed, she made Afghans, she cooked, she was a gardener. She could do so many different kinds of things. And I think that had she been given the opportunity, she might have also taken up henna.
Yes. So she never used henna in her, real life, yeah? Or,
of course she did. No.
Not used, but worked with henna.
No. She never did henna on herself because so when she was raised in India in the 40s and 50s, the caste that she's a part of, Brahmin girls were not allowed to actually do henna.
I see.
They might only do it on their sister or their mother, somebody within their immediate family, but they were not allowed to actually practice henna as a profession. Okay. So that is something that I wanted to make Lakshmi be a little bit different in. Lakshmi is Brahmin, but she chooses to do henna because what else can a woman do in that time frame when she has no degree, she has no skills in an office? This, doing the henna is something that a woman in that time period of the 1950s could actually do. That's why Lakshmi is doing that. When my mother found out, when I told her that Lakshmi was going to be a henna artist, she said, "Oh, honey, I would never have been allowed to do henna. I mean, if this is supposed to be me in your book." And I said, "Yeah, but Mom, if a woman from a high caste does the work of a lower caste, then she gets to be elevated to the same position as a lot of the ladies whom she services. So unlike a regular henna artist in India who might be sitting on the floor or on a low stool in front of the mistress, Lakshmi gets to sit on the same divan and have tea with the mistress while the henna is drying. That is what makes Lakshmi very different from other henna artists of the 1950s.
Yes. And speaking of henna, you describe elaborate patterns and designs like Lakshmi is doing on her clients. I think this was not also that common in 50s or
not at all. Not at all.
Can you tell us some more about henna in 50s last century?
Yes. My mother said that when she had the henna done for her wedding in 1955, which is when the book starts, right? When she had her henna done, it was very crude. She said that they would apply it with a finger, first of all, so you couldn't get very refined and detailed patterns, but they might put a circle here and then put maybe some dots around it. Yeah. And maybe they would put dots going up the fingers, or maybe they would just do the fingernails in henna. It was very crude, she said. How does your Lakshmi get to do this very refined henna? And I said, Mom, I am an artist and I am a creative person. So I get to take creative license with what my character gets to do. So the patterns that Lakshmi designs are all from my imagination. They are all things that I would do if I had been in Lakshmi's position and a woman came to me and said, I really want to conceive children. Okay, let's put the pattern on your belly. Let's make sure that the baby knows it's supposed to be here. Those are the kinds of things I was thinking if I were a henna artist.
Okay, I thought so. Was your book published in India? If so, how was it accepted? Do you have some information? How
yes,
they see
so
it?
The Henna Artist was published first in the United States and Canada. Then they saw that the pre-sales orders were very strong, and they were really, HarperCollins was very high on the book. So they were really telling everybody about it, all the booksellers. They had even flown me out to New York and to Toronto to talk to booksellers and to do videos about my inspiration for the book. Once they found out that it was doing really well in US and Canada, they expanded it to printing it in the UK, in Australia, in New Zealand, and then finally in India. So 4 months after the publication of The Henna Artist in the Western world, it was published in India. And it has been a huge bestseller. One reason I think is that I'm writing about a time period that most Indians do not write about. Most authors do not write about the rebuilding that was going on in India post-independence. To me, this is a very important part of Indian history, that the citizenry who had been under colonized rule for over 200 years is now finally able to feel liberated, finally able to realize that they can create their own decisions now about how to rule the country, how to educate the populace, and how to rebuild a lot of those industries that had been destroyed by the British. I think this is very important for people to understand that India 70 years ago had been made poor by Britain. They had been left poor. Most of their wealth, their resources, their craftsmanship had been thwarted, or it had been exported abroad. And so it was really important for Indians to stand on their own 2 feet and to say, we can make this country grow again. So I'm writing about a time period that Indians really love responding to. And many of them, especially the younger ones who are only 20 or 30 years old now, they don't even know about this period of history. And they love learning about that time period, what the women were doing, what the men were doing, how relationships and families were formed, how people worshiped, what they cooked. These are all, who the movie stars were, what the big movies were of that time period. They love all of that. So yes, I have a lot of South Asian fans, and I'm really delighted by that. That was one of my biggest concerns when I first wrote the book, that maybe South Asians would not like the book, or maybe they would think that I had been writing falsities in the book, that I had not portrayed the people correctly. But I hear every single day from readers, either in a book club or at a college that's writing to me, or, just people individually who write to me and say, how did you capture the 1950s in India so correctly? I live in Jaipur, or I have been to Jaipur, or I went to school in Shimla. And all of these things come alive for me when I read your book.
That's so great. That's so beautiful. Do you know in how many how many languages your book was translated?
I think at last count, it was 26 languages that the Henna Artist has been translated into.
Yeah, so we are happy to have it finally translated into Czech. And so there is the second book, which is Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and you are working on, or you finished, you told me you finished the third one.
Yeah, I have finished a draft. I do multiple drafts of my books because as the story progresses, and I like to write linearly, I like to write from day one and then all the way to the end. But as the story progresses, I realize, here's a character who has just come into being, whom I need to populate a little bit earlier in the book. I need to introduce them in some other way earlier. Or as I go through the novel, I realize that one of the characters is actually changing their belief system or the way that they are reacting to another character. And so I need to plant those seeds of change a little bit earlier in the book. So I will then go all the way back to page 1 and start all over again. Go back to page 1, start all over again. For the Henna Artist, I did about 30 different drafts. And some of them are very different from what I started. Not that the characters changed, but the plot changed. It grew, it expanded, it shrunk in some areas and grew in other areas. in The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, that took me about 11 drafts because, and here is the beauty of doing a sequel, you don't have to start all over again to get to know your characters. You already know your characters because you worked on them for 10 years while you did your first book.
10 years.
Yes, yes. So I know these characters intimately. I know what they have for breakfast. I know whether they like to, sit around and have a cup of coffee with somebody, or whether they like to be alone in a forest somewhere. I know these things about my characters. So then all I really have to work on is the plot. And once I know the plot, I know what these characters are doing. I know how they're reacting in different situations. Those I don't have to reinvent over again. And then the third book, I already have, I think, 10 different drafts, and now they have gone into editing. Now the editors are going to send me back their changes. I'm going to work on those changes. I'm going to send it back to them, and we will go back and forth now several times. So I still probably have about 5 or 6 drafts ahead of me.
Great. And I've heard a rumor about a movie or series.
Yes. So so Netflix is going to be producing The Henna Artist as a TV series. How this started is that I sold the option for The Henna Artist to a group, which included Michael Edelstein, who used to run NBC Universal Studios in London. What was happening there? 8 years of Downton Abbey. And so he oversaw that production. When he first saw the manuscript for The Henna Artist, he said, we could turn this into an Indian Downton Abbey. Oh my gosh, this has all the hallmarks of that. It's a time period piece. It's also got all of these layers of different characters. It's got, every character has a different story. And we also have so many different subplots going on. This could be a beautiful TV series, just like Downton Abbey. So that is how they started thinking about it. And so I sold my option to them. And then they went out in search of a streaming company that would pay for producing it, pay for the actors and the cinematographers and the crew and location scouting and all of that. So that's where Netflix came in. And in the end, the team of Michael and Miramax and Frida Pinto, who is an actress you may be familiar with, she desperately wanted to play Lakshmi, and she really wanted to also be executive producing The Henna Artist so that we can make it as authentic as it can be. So they, kudos to them for going out and getting 5 offers. And then Netflix won out on that bid. That's wonderful.
It's so beautiful. I'm looking forward. Do you know the date or approximate time when it will be released?
So here is what I know so far. The first thing that happens is that episodes are written, and Netflix gives notes on the episodes, and then they are reworked, just like my editors go through my books and say, don't do this, do this. And then as the scripts are being refined, they start casting, they start getting the crew together, and then they start doing location scouting. Now, there's a little bit of an unknown, and that is the fact that The Henna Artist has to be filmed in Jaipur. You cannot recreate the vibrancy, the energy of India anywhere else. It's very difficult. So they are thinking that because of COVID, we may have to push the timeline back, but their original timeline was to start filming maybe in late 2022 this year or early 2023. So let's just cross our fingers that fingers and our toes that everything is going to be fine and that we will be on schedule.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you want to send some message to my Czech Henna family at the end of our interview?
Yes, thank you so much for being a part of Ivana's family. And thank you for appreciating the art of henna to the point where you want to master it yourself. I think this is so important because I think that what henna provides, and this is something Lakshmi says in The Henna Artist, she says that henna is a way of helping a woman find a piece of herself that she might have mislaid. Henna is such a and it's an art that brings two people in close contact with one another. It allows them to be warm. It allows them to be confidants of one another. And it allows them to bring out, I think, their best selves with one another. So this is what I love about the beauty of henna. And I hope that all of your students and anybody who is reading any of my books is also going to feel about the art of henna.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.